Okay, so we're going to look at section 87 of Cicero today. By way of just a reminder, Cicero has finished the last section by asking quite a pointed question, really, which is that if we have killed Caesar, a man who rejected the crown, then really why is Antony still alive when he's the one who offered it? He's the one who tried to enable it. Um, so we've reached a kind of climactic moment, really, in the speech where he's going to turn on Antony and his approach to politics, or his desires to, when it comes to politics, really, and how he fits in with the rest of the Roman state. Does he fit in? Does he have a place here? Which is something which will come up in this passage. But he's just going to finish off talking about the Lupercalia and the longer term implications of that. So he starts that by saying, at etiam ad scribi jussit in fastis ad Lupercalia Gaio Caesari dictatori perpetuo Marcum Antonium consulem populi iussu regnum de tu Lycae. So at etiam is a reasonable start, but even ad scribi iussit, so iussit, obviously he ordered, and then ad scribi passive infinitive from ad scribo to sort of write up, literally. To be noted is the sense. Obviously, it's a passive infinitive ending that I. So to be written up, to be recorded, to be noted. But he even ordered to be noted in fastis. The fasti is something which you may have come across before. In this context, it really just refers to the calendar, but it's the sort of Roman records, of yearly festivals and events. And you may have come across the poem "The Fasti" as well, which is a record of the life of the city through the events which take place in it. So, but it's got a very meaningful link here. It's not just sort of any old annals. These are sort of the official accounts of the way that the life of the city works. But he even ordered to be recorded in the fasti. You can translate it as fasti, or in the calendar, and then ad Lupercalia, at the Lupercalia. The recorded is going to lead us into this ad scribi is going to lead us into an accusative and infinitive. So we're going to look towards the end here with Marcum Antonium. So he even ordered to be recorded in the calendar that Marcus Antonius, consulem, is in apposition to that, the consul, and the infinitive down here is de tu Lycae, Marcus Antonius, to have literally sort of given down, but the sense of de tu Lycae here is probably well reflected in the word offered. Okay, so he even ordered to be recorded in the fasti that Marcus Antonius had offered ad Lupercalia, at the Lupercalia, and then we get Gaio Caesari. C rather annoyingly refers to Gaius. It can mean Caius sometimes as well, but this is Gaius Caesar. In the dative, to Gaius Caesar, and then in apposition to that again, dictatori, the dictator. And then he's described as dictator perpetuo, which is probably an adverbial usage here. So that perpetually dictator, but dictator for life is fine. So let's just recap that again, because this feels like a more complicated sentence now that I'm actually going through it. But he even ordered to be written up in the fasti that Marcus Antonius, the consul, had offered to Gaius Caesar, the dictator for life, at the Lupercalia, and then he'd done it populi iusso, by order of the people, regnum. And then we're just going to take that as to mean kingship. So there are a few bits and pieces to unpack in this. The first of those which jumps to mind is Jussit. Who is he? Who ordered this? That could either refer to Caesar, or it could refer to Antony. And some people suggest that Cicero has left it deliberately ambiguous. The likelihood historically is that if anybody's going to have control over the records of the calendar, then it's going to be Caesar. And you might be aware that one of Caesar's long-lasting reforms was calendar reform. So he probably is the one who's responsible for this. But it suits Cicero's purpose more for us to assume it's Antony, that Antony is proud of what he's done, yeah, and that he is the one who makes the order that this should be written up in the calendar. Either way, it doesn't really matter. You can't prove it one way or the other, what Cicero is trying to say. So the easiest thing to do is just to take it as he in English and leave it ambiguous yourself, particularly if we think that's what Cicero is trying to do. So that's it. He ordered it to be written in the calendar. Um, in Fastes itself, I'm no expert on the Roman calendar, but apparently we don't have any record which shows this annotation being made by Caesar or by Antony. So Caesar's death happened relatively quickly after the events that we're talking about here, so it possibly never had a chance to actually go in. But the fact that he ordered it is the most important thing. I think the rest of that line is basically okay. The more complicated bit is populi iussu, by order of the people. Now, if you compare that sentiment with the way in which Cicero related it in the earlier section where he was talking about Antony handing over or attempting to hand over the crown, it doesn't sound like the people were particularly on board with the whole thing. So you could interpret that in a couple of different ways. Some people have suggested that because Mark Antony is a consul, he's been elected by the people, then that gives him the authority. You could also assume that actually Caesar and Antony have just kind of ignored the reaction anyway. So it just gives it an air of legitimacy to say it was done by order of the people, but actually, we're just going to ignore what happened. So either of those is fine. Again, it's about the tone which is being taken up here. Cicero is well aware that everybody in the room when he's making this speech, not, again, we must clarify, never actually did make it, but his intention would be that everyone would know that it was done without order of the people. So it just adds an extra element of connivance by Caesar and Antony to say it was done by order of the people. And then regnum. It's worthwhile thinking about what that means. The kingdom, the kingship. Either of them are appropriate ways of translation, but really, in relation to dictatori perpetuo, is there a material difference between the two? Well, I suppose there are slight ones. A dictator for life has no hereditary power to pass down, whereas a king does. There is a slight difference. The reality, of course, is that in most ways, a dictator for life and a king are extremely similar. So what's actually happening here? Well, Cicero is drawing a distinction between the two. Most of the senators by this point are very unhappy with the idea of having a perpetual dictator, a dictator for life, which is, of course, why Cicero is killed. Not Cicero, rather. I'll say that again. Why Caesar is killed on the Ides of March. But of course, the regnum, the kingship, has a whole other set of undertones with it. Not least, as I'm sure you're aware, that the Romans expelled their last king in about 509 BC, Lucius Tarquinius Superbus, and that's something that Cicero will reference later on in the passage. And so that there is a sense that by trying to reassume that, all the connotations of corruption and abuse of power come with that as well. So it is worthwhile thinking about the various different ways that you can present yourself politically in the late Republic. And of course, you may be aware that the first Emperor Augustus never actually took on the title of king. He kept with the pretense that the empire that he ruled was a republic still, and kept the institutions within that alive, even if they were somewhat diminished in power. But he did not have the audacity to ever call himself a king. In actual fact, Suetonius, a Roman biographer, suggests that he was looking for a new name when he became emperor, and eventually, of course, he took the name Augustus. But there was a suggestion that he should take the name Romulus, which is noted in Suetonius's biography of him, and that was rejected. And undoubtedly, one of the reasons for that was that Romulus was a king, and Augustus doesn't want that association. Anyway, so I hope that sentence makes sense. There's a continuation from this, because this is a continuation of what was ordered to be recorded in the calendar. So it was ordered to be in the calendar, to be ascribed to the calendar that Marcus Antonius offered, and that accusative and infinitive Caesarem, that Caesar noluisse, as from nolo, the perfect infinitive, had not wanted or did not want, uti. Literally, utor is to use something, sometimes to enjoy it. Probably here it makes more sense to say accept it, and that Caesar had not wanted to accept. The verb, if you use the verb accept in this context, it's got a sense of to accept it and make use of the powers that were offered to him. But I think it's just a better shorthand in English. Caesar had not wanted to accept. Then Cicero takes a bit of a turn against Antony, on the basis, presumably, of the fact that he has offered Caesar the kingship. And he uses that as a kind of springboard for thinking about Antony's place in Rome, his personality, and his political inclinations. So let's see what he's got to say about it. He takes it quite far. Iam minime miror te otium perturbare. Okay, so we've got this repetition of now at the beginning. There's a sense of exasperation there. Iam, now. Minime, scarcely, not at all. Mirror. Mirror has a variety of different meanings. I am amazed at, I wonder at. Either of those would probably do the trick here. I quite like the idea of wonder, because I think that's used in the same way. Now, scarcely do I wonder, something along those lines. And then that introduces an accusative infinitive. Do I wonder, te, that you, perturbare, disturb, otium. Otium's got a number of different meanings again: peace, leisure. In political terms, it is a kind of domestic tranquility, as opposed to pax, which is a kind of peace overseas. If you talk about the Roman state being at peace and using the word pax for that, you're thinking about the fact they're not conducting wars with any external people. But if you talk about the Roman state having otium, it means that there is political domestic tranquility at home. So whatever way you wish to translate that, it is possibly easiest just to translate it as peace. So now scarcely do I wonder that you disturb the peace. So this is in Antony's mind. It's something which he does. It's a habit. I'm not amazed that you actually are a bit of a troublemaker at home. Non modo urbem Odyssei. Non modo usually or often is used to introduce a construction based around a sense of not only but also, and you can see immediately afterwards that we've got sed etiam over here as well. And again, this hangs off mirror. I'm not amazed that you disturb the peace, and that you're going to need to link it some way, and that not only do you urbem Odyssei, do you hate the city. So te is missing from there. You just need to imply it from the te otium perturbare. Odyssei is a slightly strange verb. You may have come across it before, along the lines of memini, which we've definitely had in this passage before. It's always perfect in form, but present in meaning. So Odyssei looks like a perfect infinitive, to have hated, but it's not. You translate it as present, to hate. So scarcely do I wonder that you disturb the peace, and that not only do you hate the city, sed etiam lucem, but even lucem, the light. And again, this is quite compressed. Odyssei and te are both missing from there. So if you read it in full, it would said etiam te lucem Odyssei, but that you even hate the light. Lucem again is slightly figurative here. It means kind of the light of day, almost your very existence and that of the city. He's taken it very quickly from a sense of it being a very material thing. You hate this city, but actually you hate existence as a whole as well. And this is something that Cicero does fairly frequently. He pairs Rome and the light together, this sort of sense of Rome being the sort of the nature of existence. It's quite a sort of existential thing. Anyway, so not only do you hate the city, but even the very light of day, I think, is easiest in English. Cum perditissimis latronibus non solum Dei die sed etiam in diem bibere. And this still is a continuation of the accusative infinitive following on from mirror. The cum is going with perditissimis latronibus over here, so cum with an ablative. With the perditus means sort of morally bankrupt, lost kind of literally, but morally lost. So bankrupt, I think, is quite a nice way of doing it, although possibly you don't want that sense of money coming in there. Sort of immoral, maybe. The lowest, that might work. Yeah. Most worthless. So scarcely am I amazed that you hate the city, that you disturb the peace, that you hate the city, and even the light of day. And scarcely am I amazed, cum perditissimis latronibus, with the most morally bankrupt bandits. Bandits is a good way of describing it. Robbers, thieves, bandits, with the most morally bankrupt thieves, non solum Dei die, not only Dei die, from the day, sed etiam in diem bibere, that you drink with these most morally bankrupt of thieves, not only from the day, but even, sed etiam in diem, into the day. Cicero is sort of looking at Antony's life and saying, well, look at the way you are. He's referenced his drinking a lot before, and his sort of excesses, and there's been stuff about sort of sexual excesses and deviancy as well that we've had previously, But I'm not surprised anymore that you're a disturbance to the city, that you clearly hate it, and that you even seem to hate your existence and the existence of the city. And I'm not surprised that you spend your time drinking with thieves who are beyond the pale, really. The bit which has caused people most problems is solum Dei die, and then the contrast with in die, in diem rather. I find it most convincing, the idea that Dei die means sort of from the day, i.e. at some point during the day, presumably, sort of early afternoon or something, that he starts drinking. And then he continues drinking in diem, into the day. And the implication of that is that if you start drinking at some point during the day, then you must have had a night in between times before you can start drinking in diem again, into the day. So it shows an utter excess. Not only do you start drinking from daytime, but you even go through all the way through the night, and you go in diem, into the daytime again. So it's just an absolute emphasis on how much of a kind of vagrant Antony is. He's constantly drunk. And the reason that he's not surprised, he starts to elaborate here. You can hate the city, you can hate existence, you can spend your time drinking, and I'm not surprised because ubi enim tu in parque consistes. Okay. Enim for, so for where, tu in parque consistes. For where consistes will you stand? That is future. For where will you stand in parque, in peace? Where can you be is the sense where actually you are at peace, that you're not creating, you're welcome almost, is the sense. He will continue to expand on this in a moment, but the use of parquet there is a good example of the way that vocabulary shifts things, because if he's not in peace in the city, then he is an enemy, and it's something that Cicero spends a lot of his time trying to persuade the Senate of, that Antony should be declared a public enemy. And he will be towards the end of this year. But Cicero is absolutely convinced that he is an enemy of the state, and that effectively this draws us back to what we were just talking about otium versus parcem. This sense that he is not a member of the city. He is somebody who is outside of it, who doesn't have the same morals and values, and is a threat to the city. So, for where will you stand in peace? You might want to sort of insert where you will be in peace. Qui locus tibi in legibus et in judicis esse potest. Qui locus, what place, and then the verb at the end, potest, is able esse, to be, tibi, for you. So what place is able to exist for you in legibus, in the laws, et in judicies, and in the law courts, literally. Again, I think this needs a little bit of smoothing over in English because we've got various different ways of referring to this kind of thing. The easiest thing I think probably is to translate in as among, and to think of judices rather than the physical law courts themselves as the process of justice. So what place can there be for you among laws and among justice? You don't fit in this society anymore. The laws here don't are of no use to you. They don't protect you. They don't protect us. You are outside of the system which we have created. Again, drawing on that idea that he is a threat to it. So what place can there be for you among laws and justice? Quae tu quantum in te fuit dominatu regio sustu listi. Quae, obviously which. Technically it agrees with legibus over here in the feminine, but it could be neuter plural as well. So things which you, quantum in te fuit. This is a nice little aside. Quantum, as much as in te fuit was in you. So however, as much as you could, however much you had the power in you to do. So things which you, as much as was in you, dominatu regio sustu listi, have destroyed. So you have destroyed the laws and the system of justice here, and you have done it, sustu listi, you've destroyed it, dominatu regio, by a regal tyranny. So Cicero again is attacking Antony for his support of Caesar and his offering him of the crown. You're basically destroying the society that we have created. You can't exist in it anymore. There's no place for you here. Ideone, Lucius Tarquinius Exactus, Spurius Cassius, Spurius Maelius, Marcus Manlius Necati. Let's take this bit first of all. Ideone is something like, is this the reason? Is this the reason? Lucius Tarquinius Exactus. So exactus is a participle from exago, to drive out. You could take it as the main verb here, and I think that's probably more sensible. So is this the reason Lucius Tarquinius was driven out? And as just mentioned a moment ago, Lucius Tarquinius was the last king of Rome who was driven out by a revolution after his son raped a maiden known as Lucretia. It's quite a famous incident, but there are all sorts of other reasons for Tarquinius being driven out of Rome as well. And he is a kind of pivotal moment in Roman history because, of course, once he is driven out, that's the point at which the Roman Republic is established. And that, of course, is the process which we're still living under at the point that Cicero is talking. So it's something which we defend. And Lucius Tarquinius is a symbol of a man who was everything which the Republic is not, supposedly. It's all very idealised. So likewise, is this the reason why Lucius Tarquinius was driven out? Spurius Cassius, Spurius Maelius, Marcus Manlius Necati. Again, Necati, a participle on its own, but it's easier to treat it as the main verb. And repeat the idea of ideone. Is this the reason? Is this the reason Lucius Tarquinius was driven out? Is this the reason that Spurius Cassius, Spurius Maelius, and Marcus Manlius Necati were killed? All three of those people are individuals who were killed under the period of the Roman Republic in the 5th and 4th centuries BC, precisely because they aspired to kingship. So it's worthwhile looking at those a little bit more, but the idea is very straightforward. Is this the reason that he was driven out, that they were killed? Ut, so that multis post saeculis, that many ages, saeculum is a sort of lifetime, a generation, so that many ages after are Marco Antonio by Marcus Antonius, and then you have got a bit of disputed text here, but I don't think it breaks the flow too much. So that by Marcus Antonius, quod fas non est, quod, a thing which, fas permissible non est, it's not, so a thing which is not permissible, rex Romae constituerator, so that many generations afterwards, by Marcus Antonius, a thing which is not permissible Rex Romae Constitutor, a king might be established at Rome. Obviously, you want to play with the order a little bit there and say something like, so that many generations afterwards, a king may be established at Rome by Marcus Antonius, something which is not permissible. It's a slightly complicated section only because Cicero seems to twist his argument against Antony in a slightly unexpected way. Um, it's not entirely, yeah, the leap doesn't feel to me entirely obvious from that, having it written up in the calendar, Caesar not wanting to accept the kingship, and then suddenly we're on this sort of roller coaster ride of I understand why you hate peace, why you disturb the peace, why you hate the city, why you hate the light of day, why you drink with people all the time. He's looking at it from a psychological perspective. You must be lost. It's kind of the sense of it, which I think makes this a little bit more difficult. Anyway, as always, I hope that was useful. And if you do have any other questions, by all means, do let me know. Thanks very much.